This lecture would deal on our thesis regarding political and social reform in India, and the figurehead of our lecture would be Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the founding father of Indian Constitution. So, we would like to discuss the very idea on social democracy that tendered by Ambedkar in response to political democracy. So the thesis that political reform should precede social reform becomes, on the face of it, an absurd proposition, unless the idea is that the government is to protect those who have vested rights and to penalize those who have none. The second ground that could be urged in support of the thesis is that they wanted political power because they wanted to confer on each individual certain fundamental rights by law, and that such conferring of political rights could not take place unless there was political power first obtained. This, of course, sounds very plausible, but is there any substance in it? The idea of fundamental rights has become a familiar one since their enactment in the American Constitution and in the constitutions framed by the revolutionary in France. The idea of making a gift of fundamental rights to every individual is no doubt very laudable. The question is how to make them effective. The prevalent view is that once rights are enacted in a law, then they are safeguarded. This again is an unwarranted assumption, and as experience proves, rights are protected not by law but by the social and moral conscience of the society. If social conscience is such that it is preferred to recognize the rights which law chooses to enact, rights will be safe and secure. But if the fundamental rights are opposed by the community, no law, no parliament, no judiciary can guarantee them in the real sense of the word. What is the use of fundamental rights to the Negroes in America? So also to the Jews in Germany, and also to the untouchables in India. As Edmund Burke said, there is no method found for punishing the multitude. Law can punish a single solitary criminal. It can never operate against a whole body of people who are determined to defy it. So, social conscience, to use the language of the British writer Stephen Coleridge, that calm, incorruptible legislator of this earth without whom all other powers would meet in mere repugnancy, is the only safeguard of all fundamental or non fundamental So the argument of politicians should be based on the rights to self-government. The self-government is better than good government is a well-known cry. One cannot give it more value than one can give to a slogan. And all would like to assure that self-government would also a, a good government. There is no doubt that the politicians wanted good government and their aim was to establish a democratic form of government. But they never stopped to consider whether a democratic form of government was possible. Their contention was founded on a series of fallacies. A democratic form of government presupposes a democratic form of society. The formal framework of democracy is of no value and would indeed be a misfit if there was no social democracy. The politicians never realized that democracy was not a form of government. It was essentially a form of society. It may not be necessary for a democratic society to be marked by unity, by community of purpose, by loyalty to public ends, and by mutuality of sympathy. But it does unmistakably involve two things. The first is an attitude of mind and an attitude of respect and equality towards their fellows. The second is a social organization free from rigid social barriers. Democracy is incompatible and inconsistent with isolation and exclusiveness, resulting in the distinction between the privileged and the unprivileged. So, this thesis clearly cover Ambedkar's ideas on social democracy. So, political democracy to be successful, it must achieve and attain social democracy. And to attain social democracy, it would require that there must be a change of attitude in the mind of everyone. And that attitude of the mind must be towards all his fellow man in that political community. Then it could realize equality. So, unless equality is achieved, the political democracy could not be successful. So, for a successful political democracy, the urgent need of the time is to change in attitude of the mind of individual citizens to treat their fellow man equally. So, equality is the basic criteria which would determine and direct political democracy to achieve social democracy, then it would be successful as a democracy. And in the same way, all the social organizations, that institutions that we found in a society, such as the institutions of family, clan, or all other social institutions, they are set with all kinds of barriers. So, to achieve the real purpose of democracy and to establish a perfect democracy, you must remove all the hindrances and all the barriers that society fixed for some others, as we found the socially elites and those who are having higher status in the society, they imposed all the barriers and hindrances against those who are socially lower or economically unequal or are being exploited since centuries by the dominant caste or class. So it would not be possible to achieve the very objective of democracy. So only by removing those barriers and hindrances we could achieve social democracy. So also, as we found that certain groups of people belonging to certain caste and class are remaining isolated and they live an exclusive life where they were treated unequally and they are being exploited on the basis of their birth, race, nationality, etc. In that sense, they are not considered as the privileged people. So once there would be a division in between the people as privileged and non-privileged, then naturally it would be considered as unequal treatment of some sections of the society, whether they are minor or minority groups or the majority groups. And that such a treatment of privileged people towards the unprivileged people would create more and more isolation, exclusiveness of those unprivileged sections of the society, then it would be very difficult to achieve the real aim of a perfect democracy. So, to achieve the aim of perfect democracy, instead of the fundamental rights, also we have to stress by removing these inequalities, exploitations of the weaker sections or the unprivileged sections of the society, either that weakness or unprivilegedness born out of either caste or class or race or nationality. So, only by removing all these hindrances, barriers, and inequalities and exploitations in a political democracy, we could really achieve social democracy. Otherwise, the very dream and objective as aspired by those politicians or those political activists in the name of fundamental rights or political freedom and political liberty would remain unrealized, and it would be forever remain a dream unless until we achieve social democracy.